Alright guys, if you see my living room walls, it's going to be something that personally hits me pretty hard. So I'm not going to hold back. With that said, say her name, Breonna Taylor.
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 If this is the first time you're hearing of this, I'll show you some clips to help break it down for you.
It was back in March when the 26-year-old EMT was shot and killed by police executing a no-knock search warrant in the middle of the night at her apartment. Officers were looking for drugs that were not there. Breonna's boyfriend, who told investigators he did not hear the cops announce themselves, fired a shot from his legally owned gun. An officer was injured.
Yeah, see, there is a lot to unpack there. So we'll take it slow and we'll go step by step. And we'll start with just the first part of a timeline of the series of events from the night Breonna was killed.
Around 12:40 in the morning, Louisville Metro Police entered Breonna Taylor's apartment. Officers had a no-knock search warrant, though they say they announced themselves. Officers then say they were shot at and they shot back. Taylor was shot 8 times and was killed. Her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, was charged with attempted murder for shooting at police.
That was still a lot, wasn't it? But that I mainly wanted you to focus on. They had a no-knock warrant, but they still said they announced themselves. We are going to be focusing on that quite a lot in this video. Oh, and to clear up this one thing,
Walker was charged with attempted murder of a police officer, a charge that was later dismissed.
and I'd like to take this opportunity to remind some people and perhaps inform some people that murder typically means premeditated killing of another human being. Alright, let's start to go through this stage by stage, starting with the warrant.
Judge Mary Shaw signs off on 5 warrants as part of a large narcotics investigation. 3 warrants were for properties on Elliott Avenue in West Louisville. Detectives wrote they were looking for drugs, weapons, electronics, and mail related to illegal drug activity. A 4th warrant was for a house on Muhammad Ali, and then this warrant for 26-year-old Breonna Taylor's South Louisville apartment. How was Taylor connected? She wasn't the main suspect in the case, but she was named on the warrant.
Now, these warrants. Note there were 5 of them. One was for another house. That gets raided on the same day. Keep that in mind.
The warrant goes on to say that a U.S. Postal Inspector verified that Glover had been receiving packages at Taylor's apartment.
Oh, did he really?
SWAT was doing their thing down at 2-4 in Madison. We went over, or Elliott, whatever it was. We executed ours at the same time.
About 10 miles away, officers executed a warrant at a different property on Elliott Avenue. There, police found their main suspect, Glover, and arrested him.
Yeah, well, you'd think if you get the main suspect, you'd stop raiding houses. You got him. What the fuck are you doing? So then I'd like to point out how the police officer says that they raided the properties at the same time. Well, that seems very reckless indeed, considering you only had one suspect you were looking for. Why would you need to raid 2 places at the same time? You're only looking for one guy. Oh yes, that's right, looking for narcotics. That's what they're doing. That's why they still have to go there. Oh yeah.
Around 12:40, officers began to bang on Taylor's door, setting into motion the events that eventually led to her death.
So we have a specific time we're given. Oh, wait, what did they do at 12:40? What was that they did? Did they say knock on the door? Oh wait, my mistake. No. She said they started to bang on the door. That's what that said. Okay.
I'm laying in bed. It's a loud knock at the door.
And confirmed by the person inside of the house that there was a loud knocking on the door, but not anyone stating that they were police.
The detectives say they knocked on the door multiple times.
I hope you can see the multiple angles I'm trying to come at this. It's 12:40 a.m. and there's a loud knocking at the door, but they haven't yet stated clearly that they're police.
I knocked on the door, banged on it. We didn't announce the first couple because our intent was not to hit the door. Our intent was to give her plenty of time to come to the door because they said she was probably there alone.
Probably there alone. Yeah, well, we know your suspect's not there because he's already in custody. And okay, we know that they were knocking and banging on the door. Now, let's just say that they did announce that they were there. They announced that they were police, making the no-knock warrant that they went to get a waste of time, essentially. They're going to a house when they've already got the suspect because of narcotics. Now, wouldn't you think the no-knock warrant's a thing so they can have the element of surprise? If you're going there to go find drugs, why would you knock and announce that it's the police and give them some time to possibly dispose of the drugs that you suspect to be there? How incompetent do you want your police officers on both ends? Gets a pointless fucking warrant and then gives the suspected people time to get rid of the evidence, which seems to be the whole reason that kind of warrant existed in the first place. So, besides a 26-year-old losing their life in their own home, you should probably just get rid of these cops because they're absolutely fucking useless.
Or it's a loud bang at the door. She pops up out of her sleep and scared her to death. Me too. Like, who is that?
Okay, loud noises at the door, both of them jump out of bed, frightened, probably thinking it's a home invasion or something, because they clearly still don't know who it is. And remember, even if everyone was well aware of who they were, that still makes the cops look really fucking stupid.
Walker says they jumped out of bed, started getting dressed, and he grabbed his gun.
Understandable in a country that seems to drum into people's heads that you need to have a gun to protect your family because someone's going to break into your home to hurt you and your family. And you see, to my understanding, a lot of this is riding on whether Mr. Walker is aware that they are police officers or not. So, to cover their asses, the police need it to be that the first shot was fired at them because they are police. Not because they're invading a home and the occupants of the home have no idea who they are. The boyfriend of an EMT thought, oh, the police are coming in here. I best shoot them because that will end well. And like I've just laid out for you, for the police to be in the right in this situation, to look like they did the right thing, they need to look like they did everything wrong. You see, you're not going to win this one, you fucking pig.
At the same time, detectives took a battering ram against the door.
Did you hear her? At the same time, they took a battering ram to the door. The same time as the occupant grabbing the gun. So this seems to be happening all very fast paced. So I wonder how much time was in between the knocking on the door till the battering ram. And remember, it's 12:40 a.m., a time that many people are in bed. They think she's home alone and they're going there to look for narcotics. So they knock on the door a bunch of times to then open it with a battering ram. Yeah, that sounds like a good procedure on how to get shit done, you fucking idiots.
The door comes off the hinges. So I just let off one shot. I still can't see who it is or anything.
The door flies off the hinges. Mr. Walker fires, still unaware of who just broke the door down.
Face on, about probably 20 feet away, right down the hallway. There's a bedroom door on the right, and there's the male and a female. The male's closest to the door, so he's to my right. And as I turn the doorway, he's in a stretched out position with his hands with a gun, and as soon as I clear, he fires. Boom.
Okay, but the police officer that's now inside of the house can identify that there is a male and a female and can identify which one is holding the gun. That's important. Take note of that. And what does he mean once he cleared? My first reaction was, once you got out the way, he fired? That sounds like a warning shot. Once I cleared, then he fired. What could that mean?
Walker says shots started flying. He fell to the ground and dropped his gun.
Now the officers are firing. Mr. Walker drops his gun, so to my count, he got one shot fired and is now no longer holding a weapon. And remember, the officer said he was aware of who was in the house and who was holding the gun. Kenneth and Breonna dropped to the floor.
Mattingly was shot.
As soon as the shot hit, I could feel the heat in my leg. And so I just returned fire. I got 4 rounds off. And it was simultaneous. It's boom, 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 boom.
He fucking said he saw who was holding the gun. He fucking said it. The piece of shit said it. And I will repeat, was aware of where the people were And which one was holding the gun? And why the fuck does it look like those shots hit different rooms of the house? How the fuck are you hitting a clock and a cooking pot and the toothbrush holder? How bad of a shot are you? Which leads me to, if Kenneth only fired one shot and fucking hit you, really, that one round he fired once you cleared, it still got you.
The detective says he fired 2 more rounds and then told other officers he'd been shot. It was called over the radio at 12:43 a.m., according to a CAD report provided by the mayor.
Called over the radio at 12:43 a.m. So that means the knocking and the battering ram and the shooting all happened in 3 fucking minutes. 180 seconds to go from knocking on the door to being shot.
Detective Miles Cosgrove fired shots from inside the apartment. Brett Hankinson blindly fired 10 rounds from outside through a patio door, according to his termination letter.
So a quick bullet count. Kenneth with 1 that was fired, and then we have Officer Dickhead letting off 4, then 2. And then we have Officer Shithead who let off, they didn't tell us how many rounds. And then we have Officer Fuckhead who let off 10 rounds from outside.
There's just shooting, like we're both on the ground, and then when all the shots stop, I'm like panicking. She's right there on the ground, like bleeding.
One thing about the way I make my videos is you guys can't see how emotional I get about things. I'm not sure if that's a good thing yet. But yeah, my heart goes out to everyone that lost Breonna. The 911 call that's coming up gets me every time, so brace for impact.
Show 3 neighbors called 911 at 12:42, reporting shots near their apartment.
12:42. 2 minutes to go from knocking, battering ram to shooting. That's 120 seconds. And then all the neighbors call the police. On the police. Sounds like a good functioning society. Yep, well done.
5 minutes later, Walker dials 911.
911, Operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
It breaks my heart every time I hear this. But yeah, calling 911 seems like the logical next step for someone who intentionally shot at police. Right? Yeah.
According to the Taylor family attorneys, 120 LMPD officers went to the complex in the hours after the shooting.
Excuse me? How many?
I'm still yelling help because she's over here like coughing and like I'm just freaking out. But I'm on the phone with her mom now at this point. So they keep yelling, come out. So I'm like, okay, it's the police.
I reckon you can even hear it in his voice that after the knocking and the breaking the door down and the shooting is when it became apparent that it was the police doing it. But he was not surprised at all, was he?
I'm doing everything they're asking me to, slowly and surely. Like, I'm like scared to death.
Okay, I want to make it abundantly clear that there were no drugs found at Breonna's house. She was an emergency medical technician. I'd be surprised if she smoked cigarettes or even drank alcohol often. But the reason I go along with the police story is to show that even by their standards, they are a fucking failure. Even if everything that they wanted to be true was true, they fucking suck. That's why I pointed out.
I literally don't understand this at all.
Yeah.
I have no reason. Like, I don't understand at all why they would be knocking on her door unless it was a mistake. Like, at all. And I asked that out there a million times. Like, why were y'all even at the door? Nobody had an answer.
That's what we're here to figure out, man.
Oh yeah, you guys are gonna figure it out. You guys fucking did it. Your department is gonna figure out why your fucking department killed an EMT in her own home. Okay, I'd be surprised if these people could figure out how to do fucking paperwork.
Pressure mounting an incident report was released last week. It details Taylor's injuries as none despite her death. The Louisville Metro Police Department also checks no when it came to the question of forced entry. Authorities say Officer Hankinson showed extreme indifference to human life and that his actions were a shock to the conscience.
Okay, I want to quickly talk about who had guns and who ended up dying, and then I want to talk about the no-knock warrant side of it. Breonna was the only one that didn't have a gun, and her boyfriend, an American citizen with his Second Amendment and his legal firearm, fires a shot at the people that just broke down the door who turn out to be police officers. And what do these officers seem to do? They seem to shit their fucking pants. Just shoot in any direction with their eyes closed. But you see, that would be a stupidly easy answer to the question of why was Breonna the one that was shot multiple times? Oh boy, I'd really like an answer to that question, especially since at least one of the officers has stated that he clearly identified who was who and who was armed.
Breonna Taylor killing, the 26-year-old healthcare worker who was shot to death during a police raid of her home in March. The mayor of Louisville saying he will now sign a law that bears her name, quote, as soon as it hits my desk. Large crowd of protesters outside City Hall celebrating the news of that. This law would ban the so-called no-knock warrants. This is the type that led to Taylor's death.
Okay, I'm not saying that I'm pro no-knock warrant, but I am going to say that I don't think the Breonna law makes too much sense. Because yeah, the cops went to get a no-knock warrant to go into a house, but that's not how it went down. They didn't seem to use it that way. If anything, I feel like I could make the argument where if they did execute a no-knock warrant correctly, they might have had a different outcome, a less deadly outcome. Because my understanding of a no-knock warrant is kind of exactly the opposite of what these officers did. These officers seem to have just knocked and not really have made it clear on who they were, therefore tormenting the occupants. Where a no-knock warrant, as the name might lead you to believe, they do not knock or ring any doorbells or notify anyone. They just usually yell upon entry that they are police. Which then, yeah, see what I said halfway through this video already. Why get a no-knock warrant and then knock, which then gives away the element of surprise, which seems to be what you want if you're gonna go catch people with drugs, if your big fear is them disposing of the drugs.
Well, Louisville now on edge with a courthouse and another federal building boarded up ahead of a grand jury decision on Breonna Taylor coming this week. At least 2 office buildings will be closed to the public as we wait to find out whether there will be charges against the officers involved in Taylor's shooting. Breonna Taylor, a black EMT worker, died in March when officers raided her apartment and fired several rounds. The department has fired one of the officers who shot Taylor. The other 2 men now on administrative leave as the investigation continues.
I just had to put a clip of them boarding up buildings because I reckon that's insane. It must be a huge tell to say that they know they're going to have a really fucked up ruling that's going to really piss people off. Or else, why would they bother? Why would you bother boarding up buildings if it's most likely going to be something that people are going to be pleased with? And just as the act of boarding up these buildings is a sign of something really fucking awful to come. Same with this video. You've seen the buildings boarded up, so I suggest maybe sit down.
After hearing the evidence from our team of prosecutors, the grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing the 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death. The charge of wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class D felony, and if found guilty, the accused can serve up to 5 years for each count. Kentucky law states that a person is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree when under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person. My office is prepared to prove these charges at trial. However, it's important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During the last 6 months, we've all heard mention of possible charges that could be brought in this case. It's important to understand that all of the charges that have been mentioned have specific meanings and ramifications. Criminal homicide encompasses the taking of a life by another. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death. The truth is now before us. The facts have been examined, and a grand jury comprised of our peers and fellow citizens has made a decision.
Okay, if he wantonly shot and put the people in the next apartment in danger, how is it justified that the bullets hit the unarmed person? Especially when I've shown you in this video that at least one of the officers have identified who was armed and who wasn't. So if you put the neighbors in danger, how did you not put Breonna in danger, which you obviously did because she's now dead? In my eyes, you cannot have it both ways, because the officer identified who was armed, and the armed person who was briefly armed didn't even get shot. I could yell for hours about this, but I would probably just be repeating my anger. So that is the main point I needed to express in regards to that. That actually makes me physically sick to watch that. It really does. He got charged for the shots that didn't hit Breonna. What the actual fuck? Well, I'd say this Cameron guy doing a fucking shit job, but you know who thinks he's doing a great job?
Earlier today about the Breonna Taylor case? Yes. Could you comment now? I assume you've been briefed on the charges in the Breonna Taylor case.
Well, I thought it was really brilliant. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is doing a fantastic job. I think he's a star.
Trump reminded me of this, but one of the officers is threatening to sue anyone that calls him a murderer. And like how I mentioned what murder means at the start of this, I just find it crazy how if anybody else did like drive-bys past her house, had a gun on them at all times, and then came knocking on a door and then broke it down, someone got killed, pretty strong argument that that was premeditated.
But people are upset. They're angry. They started yelling $15,000, only $15,000. And word still hasn't spread here that it's only one of the officers that was charged. I do think everything that everyone is saying is absolutely true. There is an exhaustion in this city about the way that the police interact with the community, and it goes far beyond what happened to Breonna Taylor that night. There is a sense here that the police are dirty, that the police plant things on people, that they try to, for example, to turn Breonna's ex-boyfriend against her and cut a deal. And so all of this feeds into that narrative. And I think what you're going to see today is more and more people gathering. And again, one of the dynamics here that we have to keep an eye on, Ari, is people are coming down here with what they call battle rattle, with helmets, with long guns. There's a lot of people in flak jackets, in bulletproof vests. There's a lot of folks now in the road. There's a man saying a prayer in the road. So this is a dynamic scene.
Okay, here are my final thoughts on everything I've shown you to do with the killing of Breonna Taylor. Starting from the top, I think the postal inspector should publicly state whether the police were truthful to the judge. If that is something that is public and I haven't seen it yet, don't mind me. In regards to no-knock warrants, I believe banning that was just a decoy to further obstruct justice in the case of Breonna Taylor. Because with the evidence that we have, I fail to see how that was the deciding factor. I do believe that if it was done properly, it may have had a different outcome. I would even go as far as saying is I think these police officers were acting as if the act of knocking is the same as notifying that you're police. That because they had a no-knock warrant, which means they can enter a premises without knocking but have to announce themselves once they enter. Typically, I haven't looked specifically into Kentucky, but as a general rule, a no-knock warrant means they do not knock. These officers knocked, and it seems like they're acting like the act of knocking is announcing that you're police. Like, people are just meant to know that a knock on the door is the authorities, which then therefore is them trying to justify the use of deadly force by saying that Kenneth knew he was shooting at police because they knocked when they had a no-knock warrant. Do you see what I'm saying here? Where I think the warrant that they had and how they didn't use it properly is the foundation of their defense, and the misuse of this warrant ultimately being a factor in the death of Breonna Taylor, not the proper use of it. So to go through that again, in my eyes, the only way the Breonna law makes sense is if this is a tactic used by police where they go and get a no-knock warrant, a warrant that says that you do not need to knock before entering a premises with a search warrant. They get that warrant and then knock on the door anyways and pretend that that act is notifying the occupants that they're police. The only way the Breonna law makes sense to me is if that is a known tactic used by police, and banning this warrant will no longer let them do that. And finally, if you're looking for narcotics, if that is the reason for the search, so you get a no-knock warrant, so you have the element of surprise, but then you knock anyway, therefore giving away the element of surprise, why do you still need to go into the home to get these drugs, which by your standard would probably already be down the fucking toilet? Then what's the need to go into the home? To shoot at people? Manslaughter? Murder? That seems most likely. Main suspect was already in custody. One person was armed, and an officer clearly identified who. The armed occupant of the home fired once, which supposedly hit an officer, and then 3 officers fired God knows how many times, none of which hitting the armed occupant, all of them hitting the unarmed occupant, which somehow is justified, a justified defense, because they were in fear for their life after they broke into the home, because their magic defense is they are police, and that was known that they were police because they knocked on the door. How badly botched this is, I think, is the case for murder. And if they maybe used the no-knock warrant correctly and somebody still got killed, there's your case for manslaughter. And after editing this video, so I'm watching it over and over again, and it hits me that Kenneth Walker's gun is legal. Does that mean it's registered? Does that mean it's known to police? I don't know how America works, but are police aware of the location of the gun or the likelihood of him being at that home? Because if that's the case, and police are pretending to be home invaders at houses with known guns, trying to get shot to give them a reason to shoot back, does that sound too far-fetched? And if I was a judge and I ever had to really judge a murder case and with someone's intent and how much they planned it, I'd also take into consideration how much they try to get away with it, how much thought and effort they put into getting away with the crime, how badly they wanted to, because obviously that also goes with remorse, because how badly these police want to get away with shooting black people and how little remorse they show for when they do it, to me, myself, is enough to justify calling it murder.
You robbed the world of a queen. A queen willing to do a job that most of us could never stomach to do. A queen willing to build up anyone around her. A queen who was starting to pave her path.
And even before that queen was taken from us too soon, I understood why a movement like Black Lives Matter is so important. The president didn't even say her name. The president couldn't say Breonna Taylor. Thanks for watching. Coming soon will be another video on the Kentucky police and one on white supremacy. See you next time.